Every single one of us has a story to tell, but are we telling it? Are we getting ourselves out there? Are we getting the message out there into the masses so that we can help them to create the life that they want to live? Your story, it's inspirational, it's motivation. You probably don't think it is because you've been living it. It's your story. Like you're like, whatever, what's the big deal? But for somebody else, they need to hear your story. It's really important to get it out there. Our next guest is Bridgetti Lim Banda. I'm going to bring her up in just a second, but we're going to be talking about one way that she can help you to get your story into the world where it will make a greater impact on the planet. Hi, my name is Linda Sunshine West. I'm the founder and CEO of Action Takers Publishing. Our mission is to empower 5 million women and men to share their stories with the world to make a greater impact on the planet. And one of the ways we do that is through book publishing. Our guest, Bridgetti Lim Banda, she helps you to get your message out there into the masses. Before I bring Bridgetti up, I want to invite you to follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. Everything is just Action Takers Publishing. You'll find us with all of those socials. Head on over there, follow us, subscribe to us, hit that bell, and do whatever you need to do in order to find out when we have more people coming on to interview them about their story, their message. So I'm excited to bring up Bridgetti Lim Banda. I've known Bridgetti for several years now. We've done a lot of work together, not only just in the books, but also in the live video format. We've done a lot of different things together. And Bridgetti, I'm so excited to be on the other side because normally Bridgetti's interviewing me. And so I get to interview Bridgetti. It's kind of fun when the tables are flipped there. Bridgetti, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm really, really looking forward to talking to you today. And as you say, the tables are turned and it's my turn to get the experience from the other side.
Yeah. Exactly. I love it. This is such a big thing for me because what you do for I'm getting emotional just thinking about what you do, because what you do for our authors is you help them to get their message out there, not just our authors, but authors from all over the world you work with to get their messages out there. And you have 2 shows that you have. One is Books with Bridgetti. And then you also have the Writer's Corner live show. So before we really get into like what those are, I'm just curious, like what got you into doing this type of work, interviewing people, getting their messages out there?
Linda, it's a very, very long story. And how much time do you have?
We got 4 hours. Just kidding. Just kidding. We got the short, you need the abridged version, the Bridgetti version.
The abridged version is I've always loved being around people, talking to people, hearing their stories, sharing their stories, and amplifying people's voices. And I did that in person for a really long time. I've always enjoyed it. It's given me joy to help other people over the years because it's part of as someone who lives with chronic pain, helping other people is part of my therapy because it puts the focus on the other person instead of me spending my day focusing on myself. And that doesn't serve me very well. My chronic pain got to a point where day-to-day living became really, really impossible. And I really needed to scale back almost 100% from doing in-person events. And you can imagine what that did to me together with the actual pain itself. I live with a number of chronic conditions, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But that sort of opened up new doors for me. While I was waiting for neck surgery, the technology started to develop to such an extent where you no longer needed these huge, big television vans with trailers and 20 members of staff to help make an outside production work.
Yeah.
And that was the birth of live streaming as we know it today. Well, it's a lot more developed than it was a good couple of years ago, but the technology was no longer was unfolding at the time. And while I was waiting for my next surgery, I started to look into this, and I realized I didn't know what it entailed at the time, but I felt that this was something I could get into, to still do what I love doing, and that is helping and serving other people. So I set about learning the technology, and I must admit, in hindsight, it was quite a learning curve, because putting yourself out in the public domain, um, is huge. It's quite huge putting yourself in the public domain, as you rightly know. And I overcame that fear because it was fear versus purpose. And I think if you focus on your purpose and the outcome that you seek, nothing else really matters. Everything else becomes secondary when you are an outcomes based person, which I very much am. So I focused on what my end goal was, and that helped me overcome my fear of putting myself in the public domain and learning the technology, as you know, because that also is another learning curve. Um, and one that I eventually grew to enjoy and love. And another long story how we started the first show. The Writers Corner Live was one of the very first shows that I started. We've just celebrating our 6th anniversary, and I loved interviewing authors so much. I cannot begin to tell you how much joy it gives me to interview authors. That I've started a second show called Books with Bridgetti, as you mentioned in the introduction. So it really was a change or a shift in my circumstances, and circumstances that generally cause people to shut down their lives and cut off from the public domain, was the catalyst for opening up new opportunities for me that I now enjoy. And I still live with chronic pain every single day, and live streaming and doing things like interviewing people has become a lifeline for me. And I don't say that lightly.
Well, it's fascinating because, first of all, you said, it was like fear versus purpose. And when we find our purpose, it helps us to stay focused on something else other than ourselves, internally. And it sounds like that's what exactly what you found was, and it took time, right? Because you've gone through these different things in your life. You had the chronic pain, you're experiencing that. And then you find this thing like live streaming. What the heck is that? Thank you whoever invented it. I don't know who it was, but I'm sure live streaming was around a long time before a lot of us really dove into it, because Facebook made it easy. And there was a lot of live streaming before that, and I think you were involved in it before Facebook had it available. But for me, my first live streaming was that, oh, thank God it's available on my phone. I can now do a live video, on my phone, as opposed to, like you said, having all this gear set up in order to be able to do that. But it helped you to find that purpose. And you've helped so many people, Bridgetti, get their messages out there. What is it about authors that you absolutely love to get them in front of people? Because there are people out there who have great stories that are not authors. But what is it about authors? What was that intrigue there?
The Writers Corner live show really started when my co-host Mary Elizabeth Jackson and I met, and through unusual circumstances, through an internet troll no less, is how we got to know each other. And when this person or this troll really upended our lives somewhat, Mary and I decided we wanted to remain in contact despite the circumstances of how we met. And that's really how the Writers Corner live show was born, because she was an author. And I must tell you, I still want to pinch myself when I think that, I'm now a best-selling author. I would have never dreamt that. I remember Mary saying, we've got to get you writing. We've got to get you writing. And I can't believe it's actually happened. And it's a fun part of my life, So it I wasn't necessarily an author by design. It's not something that I set out to do, but I grew to love people's stories. It's the storytelling aspect that keeps me hooked, that keeps me fascinated. Um, and every author has got a different story, a different reason why they write, a different way of writing. Um, and those stories just keep coming. I was telling Mary the other day, we have interviewed around 300 authors. That's a lot of interviews, a lot of authors, a lot of stories. And no two authors' journeys are ever, ever, ever the same. I'm just hooked. Whenever I meet a new person who is an author, I want to know, what is your journey? What is your story? What makes you tick? Why do you write? Who started you on your journey of writing? Um, I have, I don't even have a standard set of questions. And to be quite honest, I really despise boring questions when my authors can predict what I'm going to ask, because a lot of people ask run of the mill, really boring questions. So my goal is always to ask, when an author says to me, that's an interesting question, then I know I've hit it, because they needed that second to think about the answer. It gives me
Yeah,
a
that's
thrill
yeah.
every single time.
I hear you. That's always my favorite thing too. When they say, "Ooh, that's a great question," they have to really think about it, because otherwise they're formulating their answer as you go. I'm the same way. I like to do the off the cuff interviews. It's much more fun for me. And if I ain't having fun, I ain't doing it. That's the that's the thing I've decided in my life, is like, if I'm not having fun doing something, I'm just not doing it anymore. I spent too many years doing things that I wasn't having fun with. So it's been a complete shift. And this is cool. I love how passionate you are. And you were in one of our very first books, that I published before it was even Action Takers Publishing. I was just, Linda Sunshine West, and I was like, I'll put together some books. Were you in both? Because I know you were in the Fearless Entrepreneurs. You were also in Invisible No More, Invincible Forevermore, correct? You were in both of those?
Yep.
Yeah, and,
Yep.
and those were my second and third books. So you've been with me since the very beginning, Bridgetti. And now we've published over, I think we're at 36 number one international best-selling books now. So it's been awesome to be on this journey and have you part of it. And so now that you are a published author, a number one international best-selling author, what do you think about writing now? Now that it's been, like, you've seen a shift in yourself. Like, now you're in several books, like you're in this book here, Bold Risks, Big Rewards. This is the one we're here to talk about today. By the way, let me just take a quick second to talk about it. Bold Risks, Big Rewards is available to purchase. Go to actiontakerspublishing.com/bold. Get your copy of the book, but also, while you're there, our authors have given away free gifts. So go cash in on those free gifts as well. Okay, Bridgetti, back to the question, which is, what do you think about writing now?
I look at writing now through a different lens. And becoming an author was something really close to my heart and something really, really special, because growing up, I was never taught to express myself. I grew up at a time where it was expected of me to play outside, to be quiet,
Mm,
and not to express my feelings or have thoughts or have feelings. They were always stifled. Children should be seen and not heard. I grew
yeah.
up in that era. So, something that I struggled with when I first got married was, my husband says, you never say how you really feel. And it was because I was never given the opportunity to learn how to express myself. And so words were not something that came to me very easily, but I had lots and lots of, and I still have lots of stories within me. But it was, I'm thankful to you for helping me get published and cross over that fear of saying how I really feel. And I want to say to people, if you are me, join Action Takers Publishing, because it's a journey. It's not something that you embark on by yourself. I really liked the experience of getting to know other authors in the process of writing my story, because that also helped me build my confidence that this is something that I can do. And now I no longer have that fear, because I've, as you know, once you've done it once, it's easier and easier the next time. But it took a lot to overcome that fear. And working with you and the other authors helped me gain that confidence. I will forever be thankful for that opportunity to have overcome that obstacle that I had.
Awesome. I love hearing that. And I remember that first chapter that we worked with together. And that was in the Invisible No More, Invincible Forevermore. There's part of your story there that was like, I'm not really sure about telling this. There was that
Yes.
trepidation just because like I'd never told my story before, right? We have so many people out there who are just like you, like I was, better seen than heard, a child as well. And so there are so many people out there that don't know either like how to share their story or don't know the impact that telling their story will have not only on themselves, but also on the reader. And this is one of the greatest values of us being able to tell our story and put it into a book. And I'm so glad you took that step, to do that, Bridgetti, because your story is fascinating. I know when you've if I remember correctly, when you first got started in the live streaming area, you're in South Africa, and there was a challenge that was going on with the water situation in South Africa, and you were like the reporter reporting this news. Is that correct? Is that how you got started?
I still pinch myself when I think back of those days, and I still work with the South African Water Chamber, and that taught me that anybody has the ability to make an impact. I knew nothing about water. All I knew at the time was we had a water crisis, and I learned that water can be weaponized. It is weaponized, and so I wanted to get that story out there, and I wanted to empower people to make smart choices, because we can live without electricity, but we can't live without water. Water is life, as the saying goes. And so when we were faced with this challenge, I realized we don't realize that the world has become water constrained. There's really very little we know and understand about water. And being able to bring people that education was phenomenal. And I still get people saying to me, I live in Canada, I live in this country, or live in that country, but I remember your water live streams, and I've been doing this since I heard you said that's the effect that it has on nature or people. And it just made me feel amazing. And, it was an opportunity for me to have appeared on international radio and television stations around the world, something that I would never, ever have imagined. It's not what I set out to do, but that is the kind of impact you can have if you are willing to put yourself forward. And that's what I'm hoping to do with my live streams, is to help authors share their stories, not just in their local community, because live streaming gives you the opportunity to share your story and your book with people regardless where they are, wherever the internet is available. And I think that's an amazing thing.
And just like you mentioned, like with the water situation, the water crisis, that you reached people in Canada, right? So you reached people worldwide, and that's what's so fascinating about it. Let's flip to talk just a little bit about the book. Bold Risks, Big Rewards. Why I created this new one here. I think that one's pretty cool, like putting us in the
Very nice. I like it.
Okay, cool. Your chapter in this book is called Choosing Compassion Amid Chaos. So without giving it away, can you tell us a little bit about what your chapter means?
It was also a challenging chapter for me to write, because it was letting go of another part of my story. I always felt insecure about, when I grew up. I was never sure whether my parents love me or not. And living up with that, living with that kind of insecurity does a lot of things to you throughout your life when you're not sure about something as fundamental as whether or not your parents really love you.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to ensure that my children knew that I loved them. I didn't want them to have the same experience. But sometimes I needed to make choices that could challenge that status quo. Um, and so that's what my chapter is all about, choices, and being prepared to live with the consequences of those choices, learning to think on your feet, and being prepared to live with whatever choice you've made or the consequences thereof. And I still sometimes second guess myself, but will I take the risk? Absolutely. I've just recently been through an experience which I wish, well, it was not a really great experience, but I would have loved to have incorporated that story into this book because it ties so well into what my chapter is all about. Because life is about choices, making choices all the time on the fly, good or bad. Um, but it's learning to trust your heart more than anything else. Trust your heart and go with it. And when you feel insecure, reassure yourself by saying you made that choice with your heart. And you just trust that whoever you may have hurt in the process will understand that you had the best of intentions and that it's okay when that happens.
Yeah, oh, such a great message, because when we're making a decision, like I truly believe that the decisions that we make in our lives, at that moment in time that we made the decision, it was the right decision. Now, later on, we might be like, oh, why did I do that? But that's looking back in the past, and then we can learn from that. But in the moment, it was the right decision for you. And it's not always the right, good decision, but I believe it's the decision. Like you made, like you said, you made it with your heart. That's what drew you to do that. So that's awesome. I love it. This book here, you can get your copy at actiontakerspublishing.com/bold. And while you're over there, there are free gifts from the authors. So go cash in on those free gifts as well. So Bridgetti, want to share that you can reach Bridgetti at blivemedia.com. That's just the letter B and then livemedia.com. And when they head on over there, what are they going to find at your website?
When you go to my website, you'll find a way to connect with me. You'll also see some of my shows. You can literally Google my name, Bridgetti Lim Banda, and you'll find all my shows online. I have a unique style of interviewing people. I really do enjoy that, and I always aim for people walking away with an experience that they won't forget, and that they will come back. And I think every single author I've interviewed so far, or person I've interviewed, regardless of whether they were an author or not, wanted to come back on my show. So I think people enjoy the experience, and that's what I aim for.
Well, you're definitely hitting the mark, because I know every time I come on, I feel special. I feel like I'm coming into studio, even though I'm not, because Bridgetti has this very elaborate production that goes on. It's nothing like mine at all. I'm just here doing my thing that I absolutely love. But Bridgetti puts that added amazing touch on it. And so definitely, what if one of somebody's listening right now and they're like, I'd like to be on one of her shows. What do they need to do?
I start off with sending people to the link to my media release, because that gets me all the information that I need to put together an interview. And I will send you a link to my calendar. And I will tell you that I am pretty booked up for the rest of the year on both shows. But I'm also often willing to make a plan. If you have an upcoming book that you really, really do want to talk about, I'm always open to making a plan wherever possible. So never let, the idea of my calendar being full put you off, because I can and I will make a plan when I can do that.
This is a great point right there, because we're talking about the book, Bold Risks, Big Rewards. So if you allow somebody's calendar being blocked off to stop you from taking a step, you're not taking that bold risk that could lead to that big reward. So definitely, I love how you said that, because it's important. I get people reaching out to me and saying, oh my gosh, your entire month of August. Sometimes I'll block off a whole month. I'll just block it off so I don't overload myself. And they'll reach out to me and say, I'd like to, get on your calendar. And so because they reached out to me, we make it happen. So this is awesome. Bridgetti, I love your message, your story. I love what you're doing to help people to get their stories, their messages out there into the world, again, to make a greater impact on the planet. If you're interested in being on one of Bridgetti's shows, go over to her website, BeLiveMedia.com. Head on over there, see what she has to offer, and get on that calendar. It might not be till next year, but it may be sooner. You never know, but nothing's going to happen if you don't take action. So Bridgetti, thanks again for being one of the authors in this book and many of the books that we've put together. And here's to many, many more to come. Oh, I have something special here. Okay, you ready? We're gonna bring us out with this awesome testimonial from somebody that I've known for several years. Check this out.
One of the things that I've personally found from my experience of working with Action Takers Publishing is that I've walked away with more friends than I had before, because of the relationship that you build with the authors while working in an anthology. I think it's an amazing project to be able to get published. It's a fantastic way to get published the first time, and I've almost seen people who get hooked on doing anthologies, because once that bug is bitten, you feel like you can release more and more and more and more stories, and Linda's got a bunch of titles that I think resonates with a lot of us who live in the real world.